In this video, I'm going to show you how to install the DasMikro V5 Gyro on the Jiabaile 143 scale RC car, drift or race car, whatever you want to do with it. This is probably best for drifting, but you can use this gyro for racing. I'm going to do it on the Porsche, even though the setup is exactly the same for all four of them. It doesn't matter which one, it's the same. I already unscrewed the little screw down here in the back so I can take this out faster. And then just slide the front off like that, and then get the body out of the way. So this is what it looks like underneath the body. It's, you know, pretty basic, you know, pretty much what you'd expect from a 143 scale little RC car. This connector right here, the 3-pin one, is the servo. So that's what that one is. This little connector back here is for the motor, and then this connector right here is for the battery. Now, even though the car is powered off, the board, the electronics are live because this battery is connected all the time. So even though it's turned off, if you touch anything on this board with, say, a metal tool, you could short it out. So be careful with that. So if you're going to do anything, you know, while messing around with this, it's probably best to unplug the battery first before you start playing around with anything. And then you won't have to worry about shorting out the electronics if you accidentally touch or slip or whatever with a metal tool. Or you can just use a plastic tool and stuff too and not have to worry about it at all. So that's what I have to do first. Then for the DasMikro V5 Gyro, it's pretty basic for the setup to add on to this car. You can't use the V6 with this car because the V6 can only be used on like aftermarket electronics, because the channel 3 needs to be plugged into a receiver, so the controller can, or you know, on your transmitter you can control the gains on there. But at least on the V5 you have this little knob, and then you can control the gains right here on this knob. So you can use this board with the stock electronics, no problem. But the V6 will not work with this, with the stock electronics. You would have to swap out the electronics for an aftermarket set, receiver, and everything to get that working. So the V5 is definitely the way to go for these little cars if you're not planning on changing, you know, anything out on it down the road. Even if you did change it out, you could still use the V5, but the V6 would not be able to work with the stock electronics. So you get this little four-pin connector that you just plug in the back set right there, and then you have the 3-pin, and then this 1-pin. You don't need this one because this would go to channel 3 if you had an aftermarket receiver to control the gains from your remote. But since we're using the stock electronics, we're not going to be able to do that. We're just going to be changing the gains from this little dial on the board. So the setup and everything to plug this in is actually fairly simple. You just got to unplug the servo in the front, and then you have to plug that in here. Now this little plug is a 1.25 millimeter pitch connector, while the ones on the DasMikro are 1.5 millimeter pitch, so it's slightly bigger. But you can get this to work with it, even though it's a different size. It's only, you know, off by 1/4 of a millimeter, so you can force fit it. So what you'd have to do is plug in this little servo connector into here, and you keep the ground to this side over here where my thumb is, and then you would just have to force the little connector to make sure all 3 pins line up with the 3 holes. It should pretty much just go right in. So just be careful, you don't try to force it too hard. Just make sure that all 3 line up and then slides in place. And that's all you have to do to hook up the servo into the gyro. And then you just take the other 3-pin side of this black cable, and then you're going to plug it in where that servo was plugged in originally. And then you want to have it facing out this way to where you can see the little pieces here, not this way. So face it this way, and then you're going to have to force this one in because the connector, the plastic housing, is not really designed for this connector. So it might start splitting the plastic up a little bit, but like that. But I mean, it is what it is. It's really the easiest way to connect these if you don't want to have to do any soldering or whatever. This is basically a plug and play. Even though they're not exactly the same size connectors, you can make them fit. So, and that's all you have to do to plug this little guy in. and then just mount it onto the frame, and then you're good to go. So I will double-sided tape this guy down and then plug in the battery and everything, and then I will demonstrate how it looks while it's on, and then I'll also set the endpoints and everything, show you how that's done. So just let me do that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, it's mounted and ready to go. I used 3 layers of double-sided tape. I just stacked the double-sided tape to make sure there's enough room between the electronics and the gyro. Just be careful when you press the gyro down to stick it to the electronics that you don't press too hard to where the little metal components kind of go through the tape and then touch any other components that are on the electronics and are sticking through. So, because if you push too hard, you can, make contact between those components and then they could short out. So just be careful of that, or just make sure that the battery is unplugged when you do that first, and then plug the battery in afterwards. So, like I showed before, so it's ground, power, signal. Just if you need to see that one more time just to make sure you know the wiring of this connector, and then just plug this plug in the place of where this servo was plugged in before. So this is ready to demonstrate. I'll turn it on, just put it on the table, let the little flashing on the gyro go through its sequence, and then once the light is solid, it should be ready to go. And so now the gyro is working as it should. So, I mean, right out of the box, plugging everything in, it seems to work just fine for me. I don't really have to reverse the gyro or anything, but you should still set the endpoints when you get it, because you don't want the servo to be not, cooperating with the gyro correctly. It needs to know how far it can go without going too far. So that's why you need to set the endpoints. So I will demonstrate that real quick. Just turn it back off. So leave your remote on, hold this button right here, and then turn the car on while holding the button. Let it flash really fast, let go, and then once it's doing a slow blinking, it's in setup mode. And to set the endpoints, you have to hold left first, wait a second, it'll center itself like it just did there, then hold right second, and then it'll center itself like that. So, and then you let off, and that's it. So the little light will go solid when it's done, and it's set the endpoints, and it should be counter steering like this. Now, if you need to reverse the gyro for any reason, it would be the exact same thing, where you hold the button, wait till it gets into the flashing, and then you hold right first, and then left second, and then that will reverse the gyro. So it's the opposite of setting the endpoints. So yeah, and then the little dial for your gains right here. If the dial is perpendicular, or I guess parallel with the board, or perpendicular to the car, however you mount it, it depends on how you mount it. But if the dial has the little notch facing that way, it'll turn off the gyro so nothing happens. If you rotate counterclockwise, it'll be fast return. So you can see it'll come back quickly. And then if you rotate it clockwise, it'll be slow return. And that's usually how I drive with this. You might like fast, you might like slow, so try both out and see what you like better. But the only problem is when you're running this stock electronics with this little servo, is you can't go past about 20 to 30%, which is right about there. If you go any further to like 50, 60% or more, when you start driving, you'll get a lot of shakes and wobbles. So it won't really allow you to go any further. But I mean, there's really not much you can do about that. Having a gyro like this, even having 20, 30% gain, is better than nothing compared to what this car was without it. But if you try to go any further, it'll just make it, undrivable. So, I mean, just try to get it as far as you can before it starts giving it the shakes, and then stop there. And if I'm probably going to swap out the electronics with a new ESC and a new receiver, and then see if I can get some more out of this, out of the gain out of this gyro. So like maybe 50, 60%, I'm hoping I can maybe get if I change out the electronics. Hopefully I can with the stock servo. The servo might also be the issue, so I'm not really going to know until after I put new receiver and ESC in here and then test it out to find out if this stock servo can handle going up to 50, 60+%. So we'll see about that, and I'll do a video on all that later on as well. So that's really all it is when it comes down to installing the DasMikro V5 Gyro on this little 143 scale car. There shouldn't be anything else. You shouldn't really have any other problems. So if you're having any issues, just make sure that the board isn't accidentally making contact with anything metal, or you didn't accidentally touch them while they were on or nothing, because that could short out the board and then it might not work after that. And then I'm not sure what you can do to fix that if you do short it out. So just be careful. Either use plastic tools or unplug the battery, or just do stuff like that to make sure that you don't accidentally break anything. And then once you get it going, you should be good to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.